The topic of my presentation is on the importance of facial and frame measurements. Like I know all of you are educators and you have taught your students enough on what are the important facial and frame measurements. So the idea of this presentation is not to teach theory about the various facial and frame measurements, but to stress on the importance of these measurements and how it impacts the wearers. See, every spectacle wearer wants to look, feel, and see good at the end of the day. To make this possible, the right facial and frame measurements ensure that an anatomically fit pair of spectacles is dispensed. So we as educators have an important role to ensure that this knowledge reaches to every student and they don't think that, dispensing spectacles is not our area of expertise and it is not our job. And also ensure that the students understand that our job doesn't end at writing out a neat prescription. It begins from there. Spectacle dispensing starts from prescription analysis, and we should be in a position to recommend the right spectacle lenses, the spectacle frames, and also ensure that proper measurements are taken in an unregulated environment. It is we, the educators, who need to take the baton and lead this area and be able to provide the right recommendations. So that is the importance of facial and frame measurements. And today in the world of technology where everything is purchased online, we should also be able to convey that, online purchases are fine, but when you want to have something which is bespoke, which is customized, which is personalized, it cannot happen online, and a particular set of measurements are required to ensure that a proper spectacle frame fitting is done. So you may be, talking about different lens designs that come in the market, the various frames come into the market, but if you dispense a pair of, spectacles incorrectly, then all your effort goes down the drain. So it is very important to ensure the right pair of spectacle reaches the end consumer. So on that, what is the importance of facial and frame measurements is to understand the compatibility of the face to the frame chosen or vice versa, and to be able to understand the facial symmetry or asymmetry so as to suggest the appropriate frame, and to be able to order a bespoke spectacle frame. So that's the importance of facial and frame measurements. So when we talk about measurements, you cannot miss this term anthropometry. So what is anthropometry? It is basically the scientific study of measurements and proportions of the human body. And with respect to spectacle lens measurements, we talk about ophthalmic anthropometry, which is the facial measurements for dispensing a pair of anatomically fit spectacle frames. So taking facial measurements itself is an art, and you should be able to confidently take these measurements for an adult or a child. So you need to explain to the person that you are going to be taking a set of measurements on their face. And also if it's a child, they fear gadgets, something coming close to their eyes. So you should be able to bring them into confidence and gain that trust that these are not going to be harming them in any which ways. So I'm not going to be reading out of these slides, so you can quickly, skim through these slides. So my main focus would be how do we ensure how we teach properly to our students. So measuring PDs are a very important thing, or on the priority list of facial measurements. And in the world of spectacle dispensing, IPD doesn't give you much of information. It's the monocular PDs that help. In this case also, if you see that the right monocular PD and the left monocular PDs are not equal, and seldom do you come across situations where the monocular PDs are equal. So there is some kind of facial asymmetry in all of us, and dispensing has to be done rightly, and for that, to ensure that the lenses are centered well in front of the eye, monocular PDs are the way forward. And so you have different gadgets and equipment available to measure these monocular PDs, the simplest being the PD ruler. And this is done. So when you take monocular PDs, it ensures that the box centration distance and the IPD match. So the main idea or the focus behind measuring monocular PDs is to ensure that the patient's PD and the frame PD match. Okay, now how do you know what is a frame PD? That is very simple. You measure you add up the A size with the distance between the lenses, you get the frame PD. And of course, the IPD of the patient you would know. But to exactly match, it's not possible, but more or less closer to the patient's PD is what you should recommend the spectacle frame PD to be. And also we all know that because we cannot match the frame PD to the patient's PD all the time, you need to decenter lenses. But there are certain consequences of decentering lenses. So that being an issue with high powered lenses. In fact, day before yesterday, we did have a discussion when a participant raised a concern. How do you ensure that, there is not much of a thickness difference when you're decentering high powered lenses? Because inward decentration of a high powered lens results in increased temporal edge thickness for minus lenses and increased nasal edge thickness in plus lenses. This has already been dealt with day before yesterday. So I'm just going to skip through these slides. Also, when we teach PD measurements to our students, be it IPD or monocular PDs, and then during situations when they go out to the clinics, when they actually see patients either in the optical setup or in the clinical setup, they do come across children, kids, or uncooperative patients, or patients with strabismus, or children with strabismus, and then the student is flummoxed. They don't know how to measure. We have been taught to measure monocular PDs, but child is just not to what this child came in how do not for that. So one quick way is to measure with the eyes closed, to measure from the lateral canthus of one eye to the nasal canthus of the other eye. This is one method. Or you can ask them to measure from the corneal hump of one eye to the hump of the other eye. I know these are not accurate measurements, but you get somewhere close to the actuals. So something is better than doing nothing. So these are alternate methods which we as educators need to provide to our students, so that in real life situations, things don't happen the perfect way. So we need to get them prepared for the real life situations, and these are the ways that we ensure that. And also for to measure PDs in a strabismic eye, so you occlude each eye and then take the measurements. Also, the PD measurement with the pupillometer is a versatile thing. So for all those who are attending the workshop on the 17th, so we are going to have an exclusive station for PD measurements using different gadgets. So you will get to have a hands-on experience of this, and also how to teach your students. And you can also use a distometer, which is the image to the left, and the one that you see to the right is another transparent ruler that is available exclusively for measuring the vertex distance. And also, please, ensure that your students write out the vertex distance whenever they are, giving out a prescription, especially for prescriptions above plus or minus 5 diopters. So coming to the important part of today's lecture, which is the facial and frame measurements. So the commonest gadgets that you use is the Rees-Fairbank's facial gauge for the facial measurements, and the abdo-facial ruler for the, the abdo-frame ruler. It's not the facial ruler. There is a mistake over there. So for all those, again, attending the workshop on the 17th, we have a station exclusively for the facial and frame measurements. You will get to play around with these two rulers, and we will measure up certain important facial and frame measurements, so that we are able to correlate. Because many a times, we as educators teach, and this is the frontal angle, splay angle, this is the, crest height and all of it. And we just leave it, and the child or the student also kind of memorize all these things. Okay, the frontal angle, this, if it's a child, the frontal angle is going to be small, the crest height is going to be negative, all of it they know, but they're unable to apply that knowledge when it comes to dispensing. So the main idea of today's talk or the workshop on that day is to be able to apply the knowledge that we give to our students into their practice. So we as educators need to be prepared for that, and for that is the reason or the idea behind having this lecture today. So again, I'm not going to be talking about the theoretical part of it. So I'm also going to be teaching, if you do not have this ruler, what are the ways by which you can kind of take a rough measurement. So that will happen on the workshop day. So please do attend those stations. So let me skim through this part. So crest height, why are we even talking about crest height? What is the relevance of crest height? What is the crest? When you talk about crest, is that part where your nose starts. And that's the region where your spectacles are going to be resting. So crest height is a very important measurement, I would say, and that you can easily look at the person and know whether that person has a high or a low crest height. A very crude way of measuring crest height also I will explain on the day of the workshop, but with the help of the ruler, you can directly read what the crest height of the person is and the equivalent frame measurement of the crest height is for a adult as well as a child. But when you talk about child, the crest height is not going to be a positive value. And these scales specifically measure only the positive crest height, not the negative crest height. So what will happen? So what is this positive and negative? When I say where the nose starts, if you see in this picture over here, the crest over here is at the red point on this picture. Okay, so when I place a frame with a higher crest height or a positive crest height on a child who has a negative crest height, what happens is the frame is just going to slide down and it is going to be resting over here. So it is going to give a very bad fit. So that is a relevance of measuring crest height. So these are a couple of pictures. Of course, I have taken permission. They are my students' pictures and I have taken one with a positive crest height. So when you place the ruler over here, you read off the crest height from here. This is approximately around 6 crest height. And in this case, it is again an adult, not a child, with a negative crest height. And this scale cannot be used for measuring the crest height. So when you have a customer or a consumer walking in with and you know that this person has a negative crest height and you recommend spectacle frames which have a positive crest height, it doesn't do justice. It is just going to simply slide down. And that's the reason why you have, so many frames in the market which are scaled down versions of adult frames. And when you supply those frames to the pediatric population, they are badly fitting spectacle frames because they simply don't serve the purpose and they keep slipping over their nose. Okay, so see, this is an adult wearing a high crest height spectacle frame, and with the child, the crest height is placed lower, so they are centered well in front of the eyes. Okay, so this picture demonstrates the difference between a high and a low crest height spectacle frame. So this is where we need to stress on the student that what is the relevance or importance of crest height in a measurement, be it the facial measurement or spectacle measurement. Okay. So next comes an important measurement, which is the bridge projection. Again, I would say you don't require a gadget, but you can use the gadget, the gauges that I showed in the first picture and measure the bridge projection. So I'm not going to go through the theory part of it. So this image in a slide over here demonstrates positive and negative bridge projection. When I say positive bridge projection, that means the nose extends beyond the eyelashes. So this is a positive bridge projection. And when it's a negative bridge projection, the eyelashes project or protrude beyond the nasal bridge. So you have relevant or equivalent bridge projection measurements on your frame. So if you give a negative bridge projection on a person who has positive bridge projection, the result would be that the eyelashes would keep brushing against the back surface of the lens and it will smudge and scratch the lens in the long run. Okay, so many a times you would have noticed, people wearing spectacle frames which are just close to their eyes, especially with people who have long lashes and they're brushing. And you know what, when they go back to the outlet or the practice where they have been dispensed these spectacles, telling that, it's quite a hindrance when when your lashes are rubbing against the spectacle lens, right? So when they complain, they say, we can do nothing about it. The spectacle frames come like this. It's your lashes which are long. Obviously, they can't keep trimming their lashes, right? So this is not the way of dispensing. So bridge projection is also an important facial feature that you need to look at. For this, you don't require any special gadget. You just have to look at the side profile of the patient or the consumer and then make the appropriate recommendations. So bridge projection is viewed from the side. So these are the relevant frame measurements. We will do all of this during the hands-on workshop. So I'm just going to highlight the importance of these measurements. Next comes the frontal angle, which is where the sides of the front of the frame are going to be resting. So for an adult, the frontal angle is going to be larger as compared to that of an child. So splay angle is the angle where the pads of the spectacle pads are going to be resting. Okay, this is again measured this way using the Rees-Fairbank's facial ruler, and this is how you measure for the spectacle frame using the abdo frame ruler. Okay, and splay angle simply determines the position of the pads. Okay. So pantoscopic tilt is another important thing that you need to measure for the frame, and based on the requirement, whether it is an adult or a child, and also for different lens designs, the pantoscopic facial and frame measurements are very, very important. And of course, we have other stations also which are going to help you, find out what is a pantoscopic tilt measurement for the frame as well as for the face. Okay. Head width measurement is also important because this is where the spectacle temple is going to be resting. So head width measurements are the horizontal distance between the ear points. Ear points is the highest point of the ear, and if you place your finger at the highest point, so that is where the side of the temple will bend and move over to the back of the ears. Many a times I have noticed people wearing spectacle frames where the bend it bends much before the ear point. So that's a very, very bad choice of spectacle frame. So you have calipers that are available. Again, I will demonstrate how the head width measurement and the temple width measurements are taken, and then how you correlate with the spectacle frame. So this is very important, and the length of the frame is also very important. Many a times it bends much before. So when it bends much before, what happens is the portion which is supposed to be kind of flushing behind the back of the ears, that will kind undue pressure over the back of the ears, and there are some marks behind the ears. It becomes very sore and red and becomes very painful. So the whole idea of taking measurements is to ensure that the spectacle frame that fits on a person fits comfortably. Comfort is a very, very important thing. People kind of assume that if they're wearing spectacles for very many years, it's natural that they get ridges on the sides of the nose or soreness behind the ears. But unfortunately, this is a case of a bad dispense. It should not happen, no matter how many years a person is wearing. So the weight of the spectacle frame should be equally distributed. The spectacle frame should rest only at 3 points, at the nasal bridge and at the ear points. Nowhere else the spectacle frame is to touch. I see so many people, wearing a spectacle frames where the temple is just digging into the sides of the face, and that is when they remove the spectacles, you can find, a ridge running across the sides of the face, and then you have sore points or dark areas or patches. It is really dug into it, and you have to take it seriously because these are issues that needs to be addressed. You don't have to go far away. You just look around, even within the family, parents, grandparents, or children wearing spectacles. Just pay attention. You can tell your students also to keep observing. You learn a lot. I mean, ever since I got to know or got into, teaching dispensing or getting into spectacle dispensing, I constantly keep observing people who wear spectacle frames, and, I keep telling, okay, probably they've chosen the wrong, temple length, or this is wrong. The frontal angle is too large for the spectacle frame. It's incorrectly placed. You constantly keep being critical when you notice somebody with spectacle frame, right? So this is how, when you're teaching, also ensure that it is not theory that is being taught, but how do they incorporate that theory into practice. You don't have to have a great setup to be able to convey this. You just have to ask them to observe people with spectacles around, and also kind of teach the relevance of these facial measurements and how it impacts the spectacle wearer. So with this, I will end my talk, and I hope it was useful.